We are at the Shibuya crossing, which is said to be the busiest crossing in the world. Every time the light changes, between 1,000 and 3,000 people cross. I'm Naka, this is Japatonic, and today we're going to talk about some super basic things about Japan, specifically Tokyo, which is a video I've never made on this channel, interestingly enough. Japan is said to be the third largest economy in the world, and ranks 19th in terms of human development. And it's a country with 125 million inhabitants, 14 million of whom live in Tokyo. But if we count the entire metropolitan area, which is Tokyo and its surroundings, about 40 million people live there. But the foreign population is only 1%. According to the government, there are approximately 5,000 homeless people in the entire country, and the poverty rate is 15%. And to be counted as a poor person in the statistics, you would have to be someone with an annual income of less than $20,000. But, of course, just by working at minimum wage, they wouldn't be considered as living in poverty. Japan, although it has a reputation for being a country where people work too much actually, in terms of working hours, it's not even in the top 10 countries that work the most daily. The usual working hours are from 9 to 5 or 6. And the proof of that is that right before 9 and after 5 is when the subway lines are the most crowded. But even so, Japan has a term for death by overwork, which is called karoshi. Officially, 100 people die each year from overwork. But according to activists, the number is actually 10,000 a year, so we don't really know the real number. But what I will tell you is that it's not so much about the jobs with a lot of overtime, but rather the unpaid ones. But there's also the fact that working hours in Japan are a bit more intense. For example, a lot of people ask, why is everyone constantly looking at their phones on the train? Well, it's because once that person starts working, no matter what the job is, they won't be able to touch their phone for the rest of the day. But, I mean, in Japan people work a lot. They work hard, but it's not as much as people think. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, yes, it was very, very, very different. But that has changed a lot. Now let's talk about housing in Tokyo. In Tokyo, living in 20 square meters can cost you about 50,000 yen per month in rent, which would be roughly, let's say, $500 to $700. But what's interesting is that if you get a mortgage and buy an apartment that's 3 times the size, about 60 square meters, per month, you could pay about 70,000 yen, which is about $700 a month. Therefore, it's a country where buying a house can sometimes be much more convenient than renting for years. As for the language, yes, obviously only Japanese is spoken. In Japan, very few people speak English. In fact, Japanese people often try to avoid using English even. Besides the few who speak English, they speak it very poorly because English phonetics are very complex for Japanese people. As for reading Japanese, for example, there is katakana and hiragana, which are very basic alphabets, each with about 45 letters, and they are easy to learn. In my case, I learned them when I was very young, so it was super easy. But then there are kanji, which are ideograms, where each character can be a word, and when combined with others, it can form a different word. And the pronunciation also changes. And of these, the basics are about 2,000 characters, and advanced can be up to 3,000 or 4,000. But 3,000, as I understand it, is what you learn throughout all of school. I know it sounds really silly, but currently working as a tour guide, there are people who ask me if samurai still exist. The reality is no, folks. I'm a little embarrassed to explain it, but it's like asking if the Templars or the Vikings still exist. Look, it's a class. Okay, they don't exist. I'm not going to explain any further. But anyway, a samurai isn't a samurai if he doesn't have a katana, a sword. And carrying small knives is forbidden. In fact, in Japan, carrying knives is prohibited. Knives. Carrying it in your bag is supposedly a crime. Well, the topic is much deeper, but just to give you a basic idea. Now, what does exist are geishas. But a lot of people confuse women dressed in kimono with geishas. It's very easy to recognize them because geishas have super extravagant kimonos. I mean, much more elaborate. And well, mainly it's the makeup. They have their faces completely white with red lips. Japan is a country where the kimono never went out of style, so women often wear kimonos. And it's like an evening gown, only traditional. Another very traditional thing that still exists is kabuki theater, where performers also have their faces painted completely white, or even with red stripes. And sumo. Sumo is also something that is still around, although, interestingly, most of the sumo champions today are actually Mongolian and not Japanese. Because, of course, it's a culture that is very kind of fading a little, but the series, for example, Sanctuary, the original Netflix sumo series. It's a really good show that's bringing back some interest in sumo culture. Speaking of tattoos, for example, tattoos are still somewhat frowned upon in Japan, in a way. But nowadays, let's see. A person like him won't have any problem walking down the street. No one is going to discriminate against him. The only thing is, well, unfortunately, in some hot springs and public baths, people with tattoos aren't allowed. I have a bathhouse in my neighborhood where I can go in with a tattoo. Because, of course, in the past it was related to the mafia, which, by the way, the whole mafia thing is really in decline. All the traditional Yakuza mafia is really declining. It has declined a lot in recent years. And now, sadly, foreign mafias are starting to gain a bit more ground. I say sadly, not because I feel sorry for the Japanese mafia, but because as one side was being eliminated, it's like the evil just comes from somewhere else. Speaking of organized crime, for example, in the case of the police, they're not corrupt. Never even think about trying to bribe a police officer in Japan, because first, they won't even understand what you're trying to do. And second, if they realize and say, "Oh, he's trying to bribe me," you're done for. They're going to take you to a cell and forget about it, because here there's no habeas corpus. I've already explained it in a video, and you're going to be locked up for almost 20 days and you won't like it. Where there is police corruption, it's already at a higher level, let's say in the big leagues. I mean, police commissioners who are in cahoots with mafias, politicians, whatever, that will always exist. I don't have proof, but I don't have any doubts either. But yes, Japan is one of the safest countries in the world. It's a country where girls, for example, can walk in high heels, miniskirts, drunk, at 2 in the morning, walking back home through a dark alley without any problem. Look, are there sexual criminals in Japan? Obviously, there are. But in general, women can do exactly what I just said, and in most cases, nothing bad will happen to them. And that's the good thing, that level of safety. There are no robberies, no pickpockets. The only thing you might see, and it's extremely specific, are scams by African people in the Shinjuku neighborhood. And I've already explained that as well in a video about scams that can happen in Japan. The leading sports in Japan, first is baseball, then soccer, then, well, volleyball, and a bunch of other sports. But what I like about Japan is that people don't even argue about soccer. I mean, sports in general, they don't argue about politics or about religion either. First of all, because there are so many different sports, and even though baseball is the most popular sport in the country, not everyone likes baseball. When it comes to religion, fortunately, Japanese religions, which are Buddhism and Shintoism, are not very imposing. They're not part of everyday education, and therefore they're preserved more as something traditional and as part of the culture. And that's why people don't argue much about religion, unless we're taken to extreme cases. Like people who join religious sects, where they are a bit more extremist and can create conflicts within families. And as for politics, luckily in Japan, nobody argues about politics, because the truth is that nobody is interested in politics. Because the average Japanese person doesn't know and doesn't care who they choose as prime minister. That person isn't going to stop everyone from having to go to the same office every day at the same time. And at most, they can change things a little. A small raise here, a small raise there. But it's like they don't see it as worth their time to pay attention to politics. And besides, voting in Japan isn't mandatory, it's voluntary. So there's even less interest. The Japanese passport is in the top 7 most powerful passports in the world. Someone with a Japanese passport has access to 189 countries, which you can enter without having to get a visa beforehand. In other words, for tourism, 189 countries. Basically, the countries where you do need a visa are places nobody goes to. Countries in Africa, the Middle East, North Korea. There are 2 things that are illegal in Japan, but they're super ultra normalized. One is gambling. I've already made videos about what the little spot used in these places is like, which are the pachinko parlors, where you can gamble money but with a certain twist. Then, the other thing is the oldest profession in the world, which you probably know what it is. I've made a lot of videos related to the topic, and it's something that, well, it's illegal, but a lot of legal loopholes are used so that there are many services of this kind. Another thing that is illegal, and there are no legal loopholes, there's no way, is marijuana. When it comes to drugs, everything is super illegal. Even smoking is a crime. Testing positive in a test is a crime for which you will be detained. Selling is super illegal. So don't try to get those kinds of things in Japan because you'll get into trouble. So when it comes to possession, whether it's 1 gram or 5 kilos, it's basically the same thing. It's punished just as harshly. I wasn't planning to explain this place, but we happened to be passing by. The signs, these huge ones that say digital versatile disc. They're exclusive rooms you can rent, let's say, freely from a huge video library, adult videos, and you can rent a room to watch those DVDs. But yes, what I wanted to say is that all adult films, the genitals, are censored. How sad, right? Obviously, Japan is the mecca of video games. It's the country where big brands like Nintendo, Sega, and PlayStation were born. Most of the big video game brands were born in Japan. And the most famous games, from Mario and Donkey Kong to games that don't even seem Japanese, like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Metal Gear, are Japanese games. However, it's a country where people don't play online PC games that much. That's something that's more popular in other Asian countries, like China or Korea. In Japan, there are some, but it's not as big. Here, gamers are more into consoles, right? This is a konbini. Konbini is what they call mini-stops. 7-Eleven, Lawson, Family Mart. They're everywhere. Open 24 hours, they sell everything. They save your life. I mean, wow, anyone who's been following the channel for a while knows this is paradise and it's always here. They have everything. Another thing is that, obviously, Japan is a country where many martial arts were born. Karate, Iaido, Aikido, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Ninjutsu. But you have to be very clear that most Japanese people don't know any martial arts. In fact, only a very small portion of the population practices martial arts. Among popular Japanese brands, which might sound familiar to many, are Nissan, Casio, Sony, Nikon, Canon, Sharp, Panasonic, Hitachi, Honda, Toshiba, Yamaha, Seiko, Mitsubishi, Asics. And Toyota is the leading automotive brand in the country and the one that exports the most. In fact, 18% of the country's exports are automotive. Among that, the leader of that 18% is Toyota. And another thing, for example, about Tokyo specifically, is the sense of fashion. The girls dress very well, the guys dress excellently, everyone is impeccable, and the good thing is that everyone has their own style. I mean, there are types of fashion with specific names, but there's something for every taste. Each person kind of like, let's see. There are girls who dress like they're wearing a Sunday dress from the 1950s. Then there are the styles that come from Gothic Lolita, which are called Jiraike, which is a simplified version of a very eccentric fashion. But they simplified it, and honestly, it turns out to be a very interesting fashion. Then there are a lot of oversized, bulky clothes, but I mean, everyone dresses in a way that really suits them. I mean, you really feel that sense of fashion people have in general in Tokyo. This is the crossing where everyone pulls out their phones, so let's do the same. You, meanwhile, have to subscribe, you understand? If you find me, you have to subscribe. Here I am, my friend. Here, so that's it. Subscribe, that's it, nothing else, my friend. You have to subscribe, because we're close to 1 million. And we keep going with the video. Come on, let's keep going, come on. In Japan, they eat everything. And when I say everything, I mean... The Japanese palate is very broad. It's very open. Careful, don't confuse it with China. Here they don't eat dog or cat. Unfortunately, yes, whale is consumed. 50 years ago, it was very common for it to be on the school menu. People who are over 60 years old. It's very common for them to have eaten whale when they were kids on the school menu. Because of course it was a big animal and produced a lot of meat, and it was also a poor time in Japan. Nowadays, it's consumed very little, in very specific places, but you can still find it, and I've seen it not long ago. And it's also thanks to that eating habit that the Japanese have that there's very little obesity. In fact, Japan is the developed country with the lowest obesity rate in the world, which is 3.5%. There are obese people, but honestly, it's very few. And no, that thing about it being illegal to be obese in Japan, that's also another myth that's very poorly explained. The popular dish, the one for the people, the cheap, abundant, and delicious one, is the famous ramen, obviously. Then, there's the one that's a bit, let's say, a bit more gourmet. The more traditional one is sushi. Obviously, in Japan, sushi and ramen are the two leading dishes of the country. The most basic thing you have to try the day you come to the land of the rising sun. And wherever we go to eat, the good thing is that water is always free. And there's no tipping culture, so wherever you go, you never have to leave a tip. In Japan, there are 40,000 anime titles because, of course, here anime is like Hollywood for the United States. People are used to watching things in anime or reading manga because there are all kinds of genres. They're not things made just for kids. I mean, you can, I don't know, an older person who likes golf, there are mangas, comic books about golf. I mean, you have absolutely every topic and genre made, existing and yet to come, within comic books or in some cases in animated series. And a lot of people, when they come, ask why there aren't things about Mazinger, why there aren't things about Candy Candy or Heidi. And of course, a lot of older people who come to Japan think they're going to find a lot of the nostalgic anime from their time. But the reality is that there are, precisely because there are 40,000 anime titles. Obviously, the older ones that went out of style aren't going to be everywhere. I mean, Dragon Ball is still being watched today, but that's because there are relatively recent things from Dragon Ball. One Piece is currently airing, so there are things from One Piece everywhere. I mean, the posters, products you see from anime, they're from things that are current. Let's say they're relevant. And the most famous robot in Japan is Gundam. A lot of people see Gundam and say, oh, look, a transformer. In Japan, people drink a lot of alcohol. You can even drink on the street. But it's really funny because you can't smoke while walking on the street. For example, in the cities there are designated smoking areas on public streets. And the legal age to smoke or drink alcohol is 20 years old. But if you want to go to a hostess service, 18 is fine. And on the other hand, there are vending machines everywhere. And Japan's public transportation is among the top 3 in the world. Because it has very good connections, because it's very well maintained, because it's super clean and safe. Although the price is not the cheapest you can find, a minimum trip costs about $1.50 to $2, depending on the distance. But yes, the service is impeccable, very punctual, and it stops running between midnight and 5 in the morning, approximately. When it comes to food, no matter where you go, the food is always going to be great. Never say, I don't know if this place is good or bad. In fact, I'd say the places you shouldn't go to eat are the ones where there's a line. Because usually those are places that went viral in some article or on TikTok, that's the most typical thing. Or else, because they have a lot of reviews. And the reality is that the only thing the place does is raise your expectations. It's going to be just as good as an empty place. I'm not saying those places have to be bad, but empty places are usually just as good. That's why I'm going to eat here, because I've never been inside and the food looks good, that's all. No sooner said than done. We go into a completely unknown place, but it's full of people. Also, another thing, it's full of local people. Still, this isn't Japanese food, it's more like Chinese food with a Japanese twist, because if you go to China, I doubt you'll eat the same dish. Cheers. Greetings to you, your family, your pet, and your annoying neighbor. Goodbye.